All right, let's get to work. So the first thing, of course, we need to do is create our React app. So I'm working in a new empty folder, going to do create React app, and I'll just call this Pokemon. And I'll be back in approximately 40 years. All right, that finally finished. I'm going to cd into it and then npm start. And I'm also going to open it in my text editor. Okay, so it opened up in the browser, and then here I have it in the editor. So now for the fun part of deciding where to start. So we have a lot of choices, but really it comes down to two things. Are we going to start from the top down? Meaning, are we going to begin with the app and then, well, that's pretty much done, the Pokédex and then the Pokecards? Or do we start with a single Pokecard and work up? So for this example, I'm going to do the latter. I'm going to begin with a single Pokecard, make sure that that works, and then from there we can move up into the Pokédex and have 4 or 8 Pokecards at a time. So let's do that now. I'm going to go into my source, and the first thing I like to do is go to my app.js, and basically I'll just remove everything, or almost everything. We don't need to import the logo anymore. We'll come back and change some of this, but for now I'm going to leave this, and then I'm going to make a new component. So new file, and this one will be called pokecard.js. Okay, now my standard import React, component, same thing as always, from React. And then I'm going to define my component, Pokecard, class Pokecard extends component, which we just imported. And then I'll just add my render method. And for now, just start with the basic, let's return an H1 that says Pokecard, just so we know that it's working, or Pokecard. Okay, there we go. And then, of course, at the bottom, we need to export default Pokecard, just like that. Now, in my app.js, I'm going to begin by just importing Pokecard, which we won't be doing later on because we'll have a Pokédex or a Pokegame. So import Pokecard from, and then as long as we're in the source directory, it's just Pokecard. We don't need the .js. So instead of just returning this div, I'm going to, it's kind of annoying that my auto closer screwed this up a little bit. But inside of here, let's do return div with a single Pokecard, like that. And then I do need to add parens if I'm doing a multiple line return. Okay, so we should see Pokecard. All right, so that's all good. Next, let's think about what a Pokecard has. So the props that we need to worry about are an ID, a name, a type, and base experience. So first I'm going to copy just one line of this and fake it, essentially. So go to my app.js, and this Pokecard, I'm going to just paste this down here. It's going to be invalid, but we're going to pass in these props. So ID equals 4, name equals Charmander, type equals fire, and then finally experience. I don't know if I'm going to go with base. I might just do exp equals 62. All right, and then I'm going to get rid of that. So now we're passing all those props in, and in my Pokecard.js, let's use them. So let's begin by adding in parens here and a div. So we're going to return this div, and the standard thing to do is class name equals the name of the component, Pokecard. So we'll come back to styling it later. Next, let's work on incorporating some of the pieces that we have. So instead of just saying Pokecard, we'll do an H1 that says this.props.name. And then let's just test that out on its own. Are we getting the name? All right, so we're getting Charmander. Next, we have the image, which is a little bit trickier. First, let's go grab the URL that we need. So this is one place. This is the easier place to grab the URL, or to grab an image from. So I'm going to begin by making just a constant called PokeAPI and setting it equal to that string there. Next, what I'm going to do is delete the second half of it because we don't need that, at least not as part of the base URL. What we want to do is add in the ID.png. So then inside of my render, I'm going to make a variable called just image source. And in this variable, I'm going to interpolate. So use those backticks if it's hard to tell. And we're going to start with $ curly braces, and we'll stick the PokeAPI right there. So that's going to give us this first variable. And then we have a slash at the end, so we don't need another slash. Then we'll just immediately add in the ID, this .props.id. And then finally, we do .png. So that should give us a nice image source. Then we'll just make our image. And remember, we need to close the image, and then the source will just be equal to image source, just like that. And let's go take a look. All right, we're getting that super tiny image there, but it's working. So later on in this section, I'll update this to be the fancier API. So that's getting us the image. Now, if we do look at the console, which I have over here, we do have a message that says image elements must have an alt property, either with meaningful text or an empty string for decorative images. So this is a warning. It's not technically breaking our code, but I have I think a good video on my YouTube channel about images and making them accessible, where I use a screen reader to help illustrate this. So in this case, if we wanted, we could do an alt and just set the alt to this.props.name to describe what the image is. So now if we go back and we inspect, we should see that it has an alt that is set to Charmander. But you can also leave it blank because it is just decorative. We already have the information on the page. So it's up to you. But a screen reader will now read this and say Charmander out loud. Okay, so that gives us the image. We have a couple other pieces of information. We have the type and the experience. So we can decide how to display this later. For now, I'm gonna make both of them just simple. We'll do a div, and we'll come back and update this as we style things. So this one will say type, and it's just this.props.type. And then let's just duplicate it. And instead of type, we're going to do exp or experience. exp, I think is what I called it over in app.js. Yes. Okay. Now we have our single Pokecard showing up. Of course, there's no styles. We can fix that. We're not going to make it look good, but we can at least add some style in. So we are going to import a style sheet that doesn't exist yet. And the convention is pokecard.css, the exact same name as your component. And then I need to make that file, pokecard.css. And in here, let's just give the Pokecard class a border of like 2 pixels, solids, whatever. Is eggplant a color? Apparently not. How about magenta? Medium sea green. There we go. All right, so we'll come back and remedy those colors. But now we have a Pokecard that we can look at. Cool. So we'll leave this component alone for a little bit, and in the next video, we'll go and add a Pokédex component, which will render a bunch of Pokecards. We'll add the loop in, get the data going, and yeah, I'll see you then.